let's do a bit of smashing the patriarchy together, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's, the kind of takeaway from for all of that stuff with me is that the enemy is a common enemy, and it's a real shame that in some places we're beginning to fight each other rather than fight a common enemy, which is really
Mm,
gender is the kind of the foot soldiers of the patriarchy, the way that gender's been
mm.
defined and divided up. So, I mean, I think our enemies are kind of common. So,
Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex, and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. If you like what we do and want to make a contribution, you can become a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. Now, join us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I am a cis queer woman, and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I have a conversation with Juno Roche, a writer, campaigner, and author of the books Queer Sex, Trans Power, and Gender Explorers. Juno's pronouns are they and them, and they are trans and queer. Find out what that means to Juno in this episode. We also talk about being a writer as part of identity, affirming surgeries versus trying to preserve youth, transitioning into transness as opposed to into a woman, being attracted to masculinity rather than men, owning your skin and celebrating yourself, being an intimacy virgin, and getting lost in words. It was recorded on the 13th of July, 2021. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
my name is Juno. I'm a writer. I think principally that's my identity more than anything now, is that I'm a writer.
Yeah. You're quite a prolific writer, aren't you? So
Yeah,
you've just written another book. There are 3 books about gender specifically. So
yeah.
I've just finished reading Queer Sex and I'm reading Trans Power. And I also listened to your conversation with Harris Hill on their podcast, Transection podcast, and that was
Yeah,
really great. That was more about your being an author, wasn't it?
yeah,
And I like what you're saying about that being part of your identity, because identity is so multifaceted.
yeah,
And like gender is just one facet of that diamond, basically, isn't it?
yeah. And,
So,
and sorry,
mhm.
go on.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the thing is, as well, as that I'm getting older, and when you start to age, you realise that so much of your identity becomes subsumed by your age, because
Mm,
we live in such an ageist society, and we're all as guilty of that as anyone.
yep.
Because none of us think we're going to age. Even when we start aging, we kind of make jokes about aging, but none of us really think we're going to get to an age where we find things a bit more difficult. Or
Mm,
so I think that a lot of my identity now is about kind of being older, and that's I'm really impacted by sexism, by that, because
mm,
if you're seen as being, I don't necessarily see myself as being strictly a woman, but if society sees you as being a woman and an older woman, then it really does put you into a box, and that becomes a kind of box that you have to continually fight to get out of, and sometimes you're too tired to fight to get out of it, to be honest with you. You just kind of sit there and stick 2 fingers up at them.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting how all this stuff is just internalized, like, misogyny, sexism, all that stuff, ageism,
Yeah,
it's all in there because I find it for myself as well. As I get older, I feel like I give far less of a fuck, than I used to about a lot of things, which is really great. But at the same time, there is like all the internalized stuff about how a woman should look and how she should keep her youthful looks about her
yeah,
that I
absolutely.
notice, like that it just brings along this sense of like there's a lot of self-rejection,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
internalized self-rejection in there. And it's really, I think it's quite a vulnerable subject as well. And I think especially if you're a feminist, like
yeah,
obviously I would consider myself a feminist, and it's
yeah,
like, yeah, fuck the patriarchy, and
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
can
yeah,
take your opinions and shove them. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
But at
yeah,
the same time, I think denying that that stuff is so ingrained and integrated in us
Yeah.
would be a foolish thing to do. And I
Yeah,
think it's worth looking at those bits,
yeah,
you
we
know?
literally, I mean, I've literally just I've just started to write a kind of, I don't know if it's a collection of poetry, but I'm really bad
Mhm.
at not writing a book. So I started to write a collection, and I wrote a line in there which was, when did Botox become the weapon to beat us with? You know, because in
Mm,
some kind of way it's that thing of, like, I like getting older. I want to get older. I want to get the lines on my face that show that I'm alive and that I've lived a life, and
mm,
my hair's going grey, and I'm quite happy with that. And but you know, we live in a world which shames all of that.
yeah.
And I frequently have friends who aren't being horrible; they're just being well-meaning, because everything is so at our fingertips now: Botox and fillers and plumpers, and I
Hmm.
literally have friends saying to me all the time, "Oh, you should just have a little bit of work done, then you wouldn't look so tired." And it's like, yeah, but I am tired. You know, I've been on this planet for 57 years, and for at least 30 of those years, I've lived with HIV and the stigma of HIV. And, you know, that's tiring. So I am
Mm,
tired, actually. And I'm not sure that if I just looked like I wasn't tired, that wouldn't mean that I wouldn't be tired. So,
yeah,
you know, it's like
totally.
I really, and as a, you know, I don't know. I feel kind of like old fashioned and silly and like, who are you kidding? Like, but I feel like as a feminist, I can't, you know, I'm serving the patriarchy if I stop aging and pretend that somehow I stay young my whole life. That
Mm.
for me becomes kind of problematic, really. So
That is so true. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, what's wrong with being tired and looking tired? And, you
yeah,
know, and being tired of stuff is not a bad thing because that
yeah,
helps
yeah.
us make change, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also think it would be
Mm.
ridiculous to go through life being perky. I mean, that's
Mm.
not something that I've ever aspired to. I don't aspire to
Yeah.
not look tired. I mean, if I'm
Yeah.
tired, I look tired, and that's just the way
Mm.
it is. And I think and I work a lot. I mean, I write all the time. I mean,
Mm.
I'm forever kind of waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, oh my God, I've got to write this down. And, you know, so it's like I'd much rather be a better writer but look very tired. Uh, uh, and that would be the thing. But I mean, I think we live in a society where where it's kind of shameful. It's kind of like there's a
Mm.
kind of sense of, well, if other people can do this stuff to stop themselves from looking tired, then why can't you? Why are you being awkward? And I kind of
Mm.
feel that there's like a real pressure
Yeah.
to not age, to not be visibly. And it's weird because a lot, you know, like we've complained about what's happened in Hollywood. We talk all the time about how actresses over a certain age are pushed out the way, but then we all start having Botox in it. Not obviously not me, I'm much older, but people start having Botox
Yeah.
in their 20s. Well, you
Mm.
can't complain about aging and sexism if you're going to kind of start doing the work of the patriarchy in your 20s. It just doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
you know, that's part of the thing about being trans for me and being and owning my transness and it being a beautiful thing is that it kind of ruptures society's idea of what we should be and what we should do with our body. It's
Mm.
my body, and I suppose in that kind of sense, the autonomy is the people that have work done to stay looking young would say, well, actually, it's my body and my autonomy, and they're right, they're true, but you know, it's like
Mm.
there's no getting away from it. You know, I
Yeah.
kind of always bring things back to, or try and bring things back to a kind of political point. And I used to work as a teacher, and the government brought in, this is a good few years ago now, they brought in a thing called incapability proceedings, which was a way of sacking teachers legally. And it was constantly used against women over the age of 50 who were
Wow.
deemed to be costing too much money and being too tired to dash around like a 20-year-old. And, you know, so
Mm.
it's kind of like, it doesn't help us to keep
Mm.
looking younger if the world still treats women over a certain age or people over a certain age as being redundant. You know, create a world
Totally.
whereby there's good, safe employment, first of all, for people over 50 or 55.
Mm.
Create that world, first of all, and then if you want us to all look young, we can all look young, whatever it would be. But I mean, let's not at the moment we get the worst of all worlds, because the government says that we should now work until we're 67. That's when we can claim our pension, 66 and 7 months, which is ludicrous, because I don't know a single person that if I applied for a job now at 57, let's say that I wanted to not write anymore, and I think, oh, I'm going to go back into teaching, I'd never get a job. I mean, I'd literally never get a job. And I know I wouldn't. I used to work in senior management. I mean, I sat and interviewed hundreds of people. People that are employed in schools are young because they can dash around and do this. And, it's like we live in a kind of really ageist society in which we don't value elders. We only value them as being kind of weird. People sometimes talk about elders as if they are fonts of wisdom and that's what they're there for. And fuck that. I need to pay my bills. I don't want to be a font of wisdom. I want to pay my bills and not feel bad about having bags under my eyes. That's what I want. So
Yeah, totally. See, that's so interesting because, like, we're talking about, in a way, there's various levels of like changing your body, I suppose. Like, whether you're talking, it's not obviously the same thing, but there's a whole like spectrum. Perhaps there's the gender affirming surgery, and then there's like cosmetic surgery, and like, I mean, where do you draw the line?
yeah,
But I guess it's a matter of what is affirming. I think the affirming
yeah,
thing is so important. Like, if
yeah,
someone gets Botox at 20 because they feel like they have to be Instagram perfect,
yeah,
but inside they're completely rejecting themselves,
yeah,
that's just, it feels counterintuitive.
yeah,
Although it's
yeah,
understandable, and where it all comes from,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's obvious, isn't it?
yeah,
And that's like the other side of the equation. But like, whatever work you get done, technically, as long as it is affirming of who you are and it makes you feel like more at home in your body, I suppose.
yeah. Well,
So,
I think you put your
mm,
finger on the kind of the kind of nail really, in the sense that if you do stuff and it's to affirm something that is outside of yourself, then it's not really affirming. I mean,
yeah,
it might be affirming in the moment for someone else. Someone else
yeah,
doesn't reject you because you look a certain way, and
hmm,
there was and we're all to blame for that. We've all created this society. We've
totally.
all created this society in which all of this happens. I'm old enough to remember when jeans first of all came into the shop, like jeans
Yeah.
which are now, I remember the first time that we bought pairs of jeans and we thought that we were American. We thought that we were Californian. So,
Yeah.
and in a way, we created it. We created a world in which it was good to be youthful, and that was seen as being wholly successful. And that holding on to that was seen as being the kind of the linchpin of being alive, really. And people would do that thing of going, 50 is the new 70, or whatever it is. I forget which way round it is now, but 40 is the new 60, or 60 is the new what, and it's like
Yeah.
and people would talk about. But I wrote this line in my book that I've just finished, which was not the poetry book, the big book. In a way, I kind of felt when I was a kid, like my gran at 50 wore a set of clothes that denoted that she was 50, and people treated her in a certain way. They didn't expect her to still be really young. They didn't expect her to be with it. They didn't
Mm,
expect her to go down the gym and do whatever. They didn't expect a whole bunch of things. Now, I'm not saying that she had a perfect life. She certainly didn't have a perfect life. Masses of stuff have improved now, but actually, what's in its place is the Real Housewives of New York, who forever want to be 30. And that's really punishing. That's really difficult. That's really because your body ages, and even if you keep the outside looking something, the affirmation that would come from the inside would still be, "I'm tired, I'm
mm,
knackered." Because it's like it. I suppose for me, it's always been the thing. My affirming thing has been I wanted the skin that I die in. I want it to be the skin that I wanted to die in. I want it to be the skin that I recognize. I want my genitals to be the genitals that I recognize as being mine, not being someone else's, not fitting. I want my face to be the face that I recognize and the face that, and I'm not making I'm seriously, no shade being thrown at anyone that does anything. We all do whatever we want to do. But as
Yep.
a feminist, I have a slight issue with the idea of trying to hold back time, because women are cast aside so easily. And that I find that troubling. But yeah, I mean, I think that in all the work I've done, in all the books I've written, it's only been about trying to create no distance between you and your skin, so that your skin fits you perfectly like a glove, and there's no, do I look like a woman? Do I sound like a woman? Do I move like a woman? Am I believable as a person? Am I good enough? And the closer I get to the kind of last section of my life, the more it's like, I just want to feel like I was good enough to have been here. And I want to feel like the stuff I did it with an authenticity that felt comfortable because it was authentic. I wasn't trying to be something anymore. And I think that, I'm kind of getting closer to that as I get older and I get more lines and my hair gets grayer, and I worry less about kind of, am I having sex or not sex or good sex or bad? I worry less about that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Has my vibrator got a sufficient layer of dust on it for me to clean it and then put it back in the drawer like I'm going to use it anytime soon? So, I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
like I'm feeling at peace with yourself feels really much more important. I feel no competition with anyone in the world. I feel no, like sometimes people I think can be quite competitive. And I always say to people, listen, what you do is no one else can do what you do, and you can't do what anyone else does. So the books you write, no one else can write them. It doesn't matter if they sell well, they don't sell well, they whatever. No one else can ever take that away from that's your thing, that's you, that's so I mean that's it kind of helps, and that's kind of come with getting older really. I just feel
Yeah.
much more at peace with, and I was a right old mess when I was younger. So I mean this isn't, I lost a good 10 years to addiction. So this isn't, I wasn't this, this has taken a lot of years to get to this point is what I'm
Of
trying to
course.
say.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. So your gender journey, obviously, it's something you've been on your whole life.
Yeah.
But and as for, I was thinking about the word transitioning as well, because what you say in your book is realignment surgery made me more trans, not more woman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was finding that really interesting, and how you feel like, I guess you would, your label that we'd be using for your episode would be just trans, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
trans.
I mean, the
Yeah.
word trans for me gave me copious amounts of space. That the instant, and this is just for me, I know that for other people, they see this entirely differently. But for me, the instant you said trans woman or transgender or transsexual or trans, it just kind of took away the space. But when it was just trans and queer, these are words that give me loads of space. And I feel like they're landscapes that I can explore and that I can take chances in and take risks in and be myself in and laugh in and be comfortable in. And so I think that when I transitioned into transness,
I like that.
into my
Yeah.
transness. I don't think I transitioned into anything else because I'd never felt like, the other gender. Had never worked for me. That just never made any sense whatsoever on any level, on a physical level, on a spiritual level, on a romantic level, on an actual level, on a psychic level, on a spiritual level. It never made sense. And when I had surgery, the notion that I had become a woman kind of didn't make sense to me. I thought it was going to make sense because I was definitely very binary. I went into it with a very binary idea that I would come. I thought I'd come out as Kate Moss. I thought I would just go under the thing and then I would be Kate Moss. I got such a hideous shock the first time I went into, way before surgery, the first time I went in to buy clothes, and I thought I'd be like a size 6. And I got a complete shock when I could barely get that onto like one arm. So like, I was like, I think we have to double this and then add some. But I mean, I think so. I think that when I went into surgery, I went into all this process thinking that I would just go from A to B, and I didn't. I realized that the bit that everyone kept telling me, the surgeon kept telling me that I looked believable, that it was I was very realistic, that, like I just thought, well, I am fucking real. And I love the
Mm.
stitch marks, and I love the way that I love what's happened. I love all of this part of my life. I love the kind of the boldness of this and the bravery and there's something fabulous about trans people. That sounded a bit like Pan's people. We should become like a dance troupe. You have to be of a certain age to remember Pan's people. But, it's like I just feel like there's something so brilliantly alive about being trans and about making what you need your body to be, whether that be genital surgery or breasts or removal or addition or changing parts of your face or having hair implants or whatever it be that you need to do to make your body be more comfortable or more comfortable glove for you. It's such a brave act in a
Mm.
short life to go, you know what, I'm going to take a bit of time out of my life and a lot of money and a lot of hardship, and people are going to reject me, but I'm going to do this because I need this thing that I walk around in to be more comfortable. And I think that's an incredibly affirmative, positive, uncynical, optimistic step. So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It is a really brave thing to do because, unfortunately, I mean, if you're trans or otherwise gender non-conforming, you risk a lot of things. Like you risk relationships and you risk jobs and work and
Mm,
income. Therefore,
yeah,
so it's. But obviously, it's that just makes it clear to me that it's not for attention. It's not a fad. Why would someone risk all that just for a fashion statement?
yeah,
It makes no sense to me that people would even think
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people think that out of kind of ignorance and fear, the kind of fear of the unknown, the fear of this thing having traction. It was fine, if people are a minority or marginalized, it's fine if they don't have a platform. But we now have a platform. I've just written my fourth book. I've got a great publisher. I've got a great agent. I've got some power in terms of publishing. It's like
Mm.
it was fine 10 years ago if somebody like me was just outed by the newspaper and they wrote a terrible story about us. And, that's what used to happen. And it's changing now.
Mm.
And it's changing because it's not a fad. Listen, if I could have in any way, shape, or form been a boy, I would have stayed. I mean, my life would have been so much easier than all of this.
Mhm.
I just would have, there's like, I have a photograph of myself up on my wall in my bedroom where I'm 5 years old. And I think, when I was thinking this morning, why do I have that photograph there? And I think, oh, because that's at a time before everything became really difficult.
Mm.
That there was like a great span of like 30 some odd years of difficulty between that photograph and becoming more comfortable in my body. And I mean, I think it's, so anyone that would say that it's a fashion or a fad is just being kind of spiteful, really, because
Mm.
being comfortable in your own body is can only ever be an aspirational thing, and an aspiration that we should all aspire to. We should all want, and we should want it for everyone.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't really
Yeah.
pay those people a lot of mind, to be honest with you, though. I don't. I mean, I don't
No.
care. I mean, I'm really. I've got a house with lovely trees. I've got a book deal. I've got. And that's not me trying to be kind of showing off or anything at all. But like, they're not going to stop me from becoming the best me that I can be.
Mm.
And I know I've interviewed 8-year-olds, and in my last book of the kind of trilogy, the kind of gender
Mm.
trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed really young children, but some as young as 5 and 6, and all they were doing was trying to become the best them.
Yeah,
And
that's a
boy, when they
beautiful
were doing
thing.
it, they were doing it brilliantly.
Amazing. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. That's next. So I'm currently in your second book. I mean, you've gone through obviously a journey of your own. What really appealed to me about queer sex was like you were having these conversations with all these amazing people. And underneath it all, you were going through your own journey of like there was discoveries and reflections and all that
Yeah,
stuff as a thread underneath it,
yeah,
which kind of makes a lot of sense because it's kind of how I'm feeling with the podcast, to be honest, because I'm
yeah,
sharing all these people's stories and underneath it is my own
yeah,
journey of evolution into whatever it's going to be. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So, what would you say has been your main transformation rather than transition, I suppose,
yeah.
in the last few? Because the queer sex is only like 4 years old, is it? It's quite recent,
Well,
isn't it?
I started
Ish.
writing in about 2016, 17. So I started writing
Yeah,
quite a long time ago. But I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I'm a really, I mean, I'm a prolific writer. I write all the time. What
yeah.
my main takeaway from everything is that writing is my home, and in
Mm-hmm.
writing I resolve everything, and in writing I find everything, and in writing I feel whole, and I feel connected and loved, and I feel like I love, and I love words, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the journey that I go on with words, without writing, I don't find out stuff about myself.
Mm.
Without writing, I don't make my own discoveries. Writing makes my life make sense, and it's my main relationship. You know,
Mm.
it's my marriage, it's my relationship, it's my family, it's my siblings, it's kind of my everything really now, and that's been an absolute joy. So
Yeah.
my transness, first of all, and I think I probably had to do it in that order. I had to be in the right body to find the right language to live within my body. And the language was the language of literature, of words, of non-fiction, of poetry, of, you know, who knows what I'll do in the future. But
Mm.
and also my discovery is that I often or often I kind of I move because I make connections with people. That making connections, I'm socially inept. So if you put me in a party, like a good few years back, I used to end up on lists of like important people and this, and there would be a party, and I would go to it, and I'd be like so awkward. If there was a photograph of me, I would just look awkward, like
Uh-huh.
I'm socially incapable and inept, and I'm shit at small talk. If someone tries to make small
Yeah.
talk with me, I end up talking about something ridiculously philosophical, and they always walk away from me really quickly. And like,
Ah,
but no, it's fine because like I know
that's
that I'm
funny.
not easy. I know that I'm not easy. I'm not
Mm.
dinner party whatever. But
Yeah.
kind of writing has enabled me to see that and not feel bad about that, because it makes because people say to me, like, I live in the middle of nowhere in the mountains in Andalusia, and people say to me, are you lonely? And I say, not when I'm writing a book, because I've got
Mm.
everyone I need. I've got these people from my past, these people that I've interviewed, these memories are there. I've got this country, I've got that country, I've got this experience, I've got, you know, it's like I'm writing this set of poems at the moment, and it's like I'm just so, you know, it's like I'm writing about paint colors and Paris fashion shows, and it's like my head is just completely full of stuff. So
Mm.
my that's been my main takeaway, is that I'm all
Mm.
right as a person. I'm doing in this body, which I define as being trans. I don't define it as having a kind of binary gender, just as it
Mm-hmm.
being trans. But in this trans body, with my kind of queer brain, I think that my brain is very queer. I see things, I love the kind of queerness of queer. It makes
Mm-hmm.
me laugh, it makes me smile. Even now, it makes me, you know, I like them. And and I need words. And if I have those things, then I'm all right as a person. I'm not going to fall off the wagon and do drugs again. I'm not going to fall into abject depression. You know, those things keep me on the kind of, you know, I
On the
suppose
gay
it's
and
right.
narrow,
Yeah, the
or the
gay and
gay and not
narrow. Yeah,
narrow,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
gay and broad.
Yes, the gay, the gay and vast. They keep
Yeah.
me on. And I think that is true. They really, those things together kind of come together, and they allow me to feel, yeah, like I'm like this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm here for. So,
Mm.
and I don't have any other aspirations beyond that. I'm not someone that wants to be in London you know, I don't have a I don't have a career ladder that I'm planning. My
Mhm.
only thing is to write more books and to keep writing and to discover what, you know, I get sentences in my head, and I think, like, I woke up this morning and I wrote down that it felt like my belly was full of moles, as in
Mm.
moles, the things that create molehills,
Yeah.
and I thought, why am I feeling like that? Why does my belly feel like it's full of animals? You know, and it's like I just started to explore that, and I love doing that. And it's like, I don't know if that's ever going to become something, but
Mhm.
I wrote 1,000 words about it,
Nice.
and I really that's you know, yeah. So that's what this last 4 or 5 years has shown me, that I'm all right as a person as long as I keep hold of this, and my gardening, my gardens, and my gardening. So.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I was just thinking about what you said about being at a party, and I would be like in the room where no one is except a cat. That's where I would be, just
Same
making
here.
friends with a
We,
cat.
we would probably be in there together, and we probably wouldn't talk if we were in the
That's
same room.
right. We would just be appreciating
Yeah.
the quietness and the cat.
And we
Yeah,
would talk
that
about the cat.
you
Oh
talk
yeah,
about
there's
the cat.
the cat. Okay, so the
Yeah,
cat's quite silly. Yeah, I mean
yeah.
the thing is that that used to really trouble me. It used to make me feel really. I used to kind of beat myself up so much about,
Mm.
why can't you just go in a room and be, you know, and it got to the point whereby I just kind of would get such social anxieties that I would just shake and get nervous, and
Mm.
you know, it would be awful. I'd end up going in the toilets and just popping Valium like they were Smarties, just in
Mm.
order to go in a room, still not be able to talk, but just not feel like I was being fucking up or being looking stupid or whatever. And
Yeah.
you know, that felt
Mm.
unbearable. It felt really like my addiction, my kind of 10 years of addiction was with hard drugs, with class A's. But then there were
Mm.
many years around that when I was just popping prescription pills. I mean, I still fight with them, but I mean, it's like there was a time at which I was so enmeshed in a kind of chemically trying to make myself good enough for the world that,
Mm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't feel that anymore. I feel very comfy now. I feel like
That's really good.
yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
my body feels like a really well-fitting suede glove, the kind of glove that's been worn for many years, and you
Yeah.
know, is a bit raggedy, but is very, very comfy. And that's how it feels.
Mm. I love that. I mean, if you look at your journey in the last few years, I think in queer sex, you still considered, or during the time that you were writing that, it seems like you still considered yourself, you were still playing with the word woman and I guess
Yeah,
maybe trying to fit into that.
yeah,
But then you came to this place of trans and you're attracted to masculinity, but experiencing myself as feminine. Yeah. Would you talk a bit more about that change and what made you come to that place from like trying to fit into womanhood and then coming to a place of like, no, trans is where I
yeah,
fit?
yeah. I think one of the main things was this, I really like I'd always found cis men attractive,
Hmm.
and I stopped finding cis men attractive, and but I still found masculinity really attractive. And I thought, well, why am I finding masculinity really attractive? What does that say about me? Is that a social? Is that socialized? Is that what's going on there? What do I need to let go of? And then I realized that if I was going to hold on to some of it, I may as well hold on to all of it. And if I was going to try and let go of some of it, I might as well let go of all of it and say, I just don't know anymore. I don't know who I find attractive. I think I veer towards finding masculinity, whatever that means, attractive. And over the ensuing years, I've realized that means a whole myriad of things, but not often cis men. trans men, trans masculinity is adorable. If I were 20 years younger, I mean, that's where I would find my. If I was going to find a life partner, I doubt I would have ever found a life partner because I'm far too spiky for a life partner. But where I, not spiky, I might, and I would have probably found my home in a kind of trans masculine space and would have found a partner there. And my life would have been much more non-binary, much more fluid, much more gender non-conforming, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think that when I went through the process, I started the process off in a really binary sense. I mean, I wasn't, there was, this all happened. All of the kind of queerness, all of the kind of finding trans as being like a million and one other people. When I went into this process and they said to me, because when I started, it was years ago. My surgery was kind of cut off for 10 years because of my HIV, and people just wouldn't. I couldn't get a referral essentially because they said no one's
Right.
going to operate. So it was just ridiculous, horrible, really. But I think it's that when I started the process, I literally thought it was going to be a cut and dried, really simple thing. Really, it's just like a cut and paste. Here you go. You're going to leave that, and you're going to go there, and you're going to be this. And it's just through the process, I started to think about my body. I started to think about my genitals. I started to think. People would say, I'd see people talking about having a vagina, and for me, it didn't quite work to say that. It did say that I had an upcycled cock and balls that resembled a vagina. That really worked for me because then it was like, oh, all the skin is still the same skin. It's kind of scrotal skin. It's this. It's been refashioned, and it felt like an outsider work of art. It felt magical. So it wasn't lessened for me. It wasn't like it wasn't lessened, and I wasn't doing that thing of going. Like if I wanted to call myself a woman tomorrow, that's my right. I don't. This isn't about kind of. I'm not saying what I'm saying, and I think sometimes people used to misinterpret me by going, "You're saying what you're saying because you hate yourself," and it's like, no, no, no. I actually love myself, and I love my genitals, and when I look in the mirror naked, it does. It looks just like a vagina, like any other vagina. It's perfect. But actually, I know it's made of cock and ball skin, and that makes it even more perfect because I took that chance in allowing that to happen. I went through the pain of that operation and through the rigors and the toughness of that healing process to make it happen. And I'm going to own that skin because I'm going to become a really good custodian of my genitals. And I'm not ever going to say, I don't ever want anyone. What really happened was that I never wanted anyone to roll on top of me and fuck me and me go, I hope they don't find out. I hope they don't find out. I never wanted that to happen. I wanted them to know from the get-go exactly what I am and who I am and what I'm made of and what my genitals are made of. And what my genitals look like a vagina, what they're completely. I want that to be my truth. And in that sense, it's that thing of it again about I didn't want there to be any space between me and my skin. I didn't want to, because once someone says to you, oh, like people used to say this all the time, they don't say it so much now, but they still say it a bit. They go, oh, I would never know. And I used to think, but I want you to know. I want you to know. I don't want you to not know. How dare you think that that's like a compliment to me? Like,
Right.
I've not gone through everything I've gone through so that you don't know. I know that for other people that's the truth, and I know that for other people that's what they want to do, and that's fine. Again, it's about safety because let's be honest, if you are visibly trans, you are much more of a target. We can't get away from that. We live in a vile, violent world. But for me, I wasn't going to decrease the violence that would come to me by hoping and praying that no one found out. And I suppose I'm quite well known, so it's not like I can hide this. It's not like I can, even if I wanted to now, say, oh no, I take it all back. I'm a woman. I'm nothing. It's like, online, it just is like really weirdly. My mum said to me ages ago, she said, if I do a search for you, the first thing that comes up is why I've not got a vagina. She's like, I wish you hadn't said that. And it's like, so in that kind of sense, it's like, you know, and I just hope that I suppose I just hope that in living my life like this, I might have created some space for other people to make a whole, because I didn't have any choice. When I transitioned, the choice was you are going to not be a man anymore, you are going to become a woman, full stop. A woman, and you know, I remember wearing Converse to an appointment, and then them saying to me, why are you being awkward? Why are you being, and me saying, why am I being awkward? Because you've worn Converse. Why are you not dressing like a woman? And you know, it's like it's this notion of like, admittedly, that was a good few years ago. But I mean, I imagine that's still that notion still of like womanhood and what womanhood should look like. And
Yeah, so stereotypical, all
it's
of it, isn't it?
really stupidly stereotypical. So, I mean, I think it's, yeah, so I think that's what caused. I mean, it was like my journey has evolved. There was never a perfect moment. There was never an imperfect moment. There was never a light bulb moment. It was just a series of me wanting to feel more comfortable, and the more comfortable I felt, the less I moved away from anything that resembled anything binary. And that doesn't mean that I don't look incredible, because I look incredibly binary. I mean, I do. And I like going into Boots and looking at eyeliner. I do. And mascara. I do. But I'm not sure that that is anything to do with being binary. I think it's to do with the exploration for me of makeup. And I think that's a fabulous thing. And I think the longer that I'm alive, the more it's becoming more of a fabulous thing, because the more people are doing it, be they however they define themselves or their gender or their, you know, sexuality, whatever it might be. So yeah,
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, you can use makeup as a human being, whatever gender or sex or
absolutely,
sexuality you are, right? Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And I would say that
yeah.
about the surgery I had done would be like the surgery I had the surgery that I had done as a human being, wanting my body to be slightly different. And the notion that I kind of like I look the kind of the damaging notion, I think, and that's where the thing about self-identification I think is so important. I don't have a gender recognition certificate. So God forbid I were to get in trouble here in Spain, I'd go into a men's prison. And that would happen to me around the world in many places. They'd probably cut my hair off and I'd go into a men's prison. And that really upsets me. But I refuse to not, I want to identify. It's my political and social right to identify. I don't want to have to go to a panel of people and define myself as being, because I don't know what define myself as being. I want to self-identify as being someone that wants the right to change their mind and to express themselves as they want to express themselves. I mean, gender seems like such an old-fashioned, stupid trope. You know, the notion of a binary gender, of men being this and women being this, it just feels so, you know, it's what got us Trump. It's what got us Trump. It's what's got us Boris Johnson. It's what's got us that whole, you know, Tory cabinet and other people, and that the men that have just have just ruined what was a beautiful kind of process. I have never watched a single football match in my life, but even I could see from the outside that there was a beautiful thing that went on around the England football team being quite so glorious young men, but it was ruined by what was going on outside by kind of masculinity, that form of masculinity. So,
Yeah, yeah. There was something else you said in your book, one of the books. You talked about being an intimacy virgin. And I was thinking about, do you have any further thoughts on that? Or has that evolved in any way? Or do you find maybe you get a sense of, because you were talking about your sense of identity, there is a lot of like being a writer and an author is a
yeah,
big part of that.
yeah,
So do you feel like you get a sense of intimacy from maybe that as well? Because again,
yeah,
like relationships are defined in such a way it has to look like this, otherwise it's not
yeah,
valid. And there's this hierarchy of like the one monogamous partner has a higher status than any other type of relationship, which is something that needs to be blown out of the water as well, really.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think I still struggle with intimacy. I mean, I was the book that comes out next year is about partially about my childhood and about my growing up and the
Right.
struggles of that. And it wasn't easy. It was a tough old gig, and I didn't learn anything about intimacy or love or any of that stuff from that
Mm.
situation. And so I still really struggle with it with human beings.
Mm.
Thus, I live in the mountains on my own. I mean, when I moved here, I didn't even speak a word of Spanish, so I was truly on my own. I couldn't understand anyone. I live in a Spanish village where people just speak Spanish.
Mm.
I mean, I really struggle with intimacy, but not with words. With words, I feel completely intimate and sexual
Mm.
and open, and I feel vulnerable and powerful and erotic, and I feel all of that stuff. The intimacy is absolute. And I think in terms of that, like I'm starting to flirt much more with people. And I'm sure that that's happening because it's coming out of the intimacy that I've discovered in my, I mean, as usual, I'm always doing things at the wrong time. I'm like hitting 57 and it's like, I'm ready for intimacy now. I'm ready for it. And that's not
Oh.
to say, listen, I've had masses of sex and masses of shit sex and some sex that was okay and some sex that was, and I've had relationships and but I just was not great at intimacy. I didn't understand the intimate space between two people. I felt like I was getting it wrong all the time. I felt like I
Mm.
couldn't bring to the table what needed to be brought to the table. I mean, I feel like that's my journey, and my journey in life is to be. And I suppose it's that old kind of chestnut, really. And like, until you can be intimate with yourself, you can't be intimate with anyone else. And my journey in the mountains, moving to the middle of nowhere from London. So one day I'm in London, the next day I'm not. I'm in the mountains on my own.
Mm.
My dog turns up 5 days later. Not, I mean, he was being delivered. It wasn't like he just turned up on his own accord, found me here 5 days later. But it's like I feel like all of this has been a kind of journey to really to intimacy. And
Mm.
as someone that's lived with HIV, when I was diagnosed, there were still headlines that said that people like me should be shipped off to an island and shot, or that we should be put in prison, or we should be sterilized, or we should be this, or we should never have sex. And so it's quite difficult to live with that. It's quite difficult to
Mm.
have been me, to have had my upbringing, and then have HIV laid on top of that.
Mm.
My brain really struggled to find a way to to process that much kind of traumatic impingement, really. So yeah, I think that I thank you for bringing it up. I think it's a work in progress,
Mm.
and I think that's part of the annoying thing about the kind of aging thing is that we're supposed to be like I just feel some days I feel as fucked up as I ever did, and as messy and as all over the place and as incapable of whatever. And I'm always
Mm.
talking to the dogs and just going, I just can't cope. I can't cope. And I'm like, and then other days I realize I'm a lot closer to being present in what might be an intimate space. And like I said, I feel like I'm beginning to flirt a bit more with people, which is something I've never done comfortably. I've been
Mm.
sexual with people before. I've acted like I've been sexually available really before easily because I felt like
Mm.
that's what I had to do and I should do. I should be
Mm.
available for people. That's what intimacy is. Intimacy is having no boundaries, not having any
Mm.
kind of. So in that sense, I feel like, yeah, in that sense, I feel like I'm kind of growing at
Mm.
57. It never stops, really, the work.
Totally, totally. I think intimacy, real intimacy, intimacy is such a vulnerable thing, and it's something we don't really learn about. To be fair,
No.
because I'm now discovering, like, with the help of my therapist, like just looking back and seeing just how dysfunctional, like, my life and relationships have really been. Like, not
Mm,
in a in a self what do you call it? I'm not giving myself a hard time about it, but it's more like an observation
Yeah.
but one that I feel like I'm now in a place that I can look at that with more self-acceptance than
Yeah.
ever before. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know any better. I didn't learn some of these skills. I just
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah.
And
We
it's
take
like,
so much for
oh,
granted. We just
yeah.
really, we take parenting for granted. We take learning this stuff. We take love. We think it's just getting, so much of it. And it's all, it's really difficult to be a human being.
Mm,
If we took that as being the bottom line, this is going to be a really tough gig. Being a human in a capitalist society that had, that forefronts romance and perfection and perfect bodies. This is a really tough gig. If we were a bit more honest about that and spent a bit less time teaching the area of a triangle, we might end up with kids that would be slightly more rounded and more
mm,
capable of going through life without kind of self-harming in one way or another. I mean, and I think that's what so many of us do. And we do that in relationships. And then we beat ourselves up because we couldn't do relationships. And then, it takes good therapy. It takes good therapy to really understand your kind of part in it and the world's part in it and all the other people's parts in it. It takes so much to kind of, I mean, I think we just accept, we go, oh, love's an easy thing. There's films about it, there's books about it. It's love. I spent my life thinking that I was going to be Julia Roberts in Eat, Pray, Love. I
mm.
thought I was going to be Eleanor Dashwood. I mean, I just had this set of kind of women that I thought that I would be. And I would just literally, even when I kind of moved here, I just thought, I'm going to go there. I'm going to meet someone that does flamenco. I love flamenco. I'm going to meet
Yeah.
someone and I'm going to fall in love and I'm going to become part of their family. I mean, it was like a book.
Mm, totally. That's what
Eh,
we're taught it should look like, right?
That's
And
what we
if
thought
you
it should
don't
look
have
like.
that,
Yeah.
yeah. And if you don't have that, then you're basically a failure, really. And
You're
you're a bit
broken.
sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so sad because the truth of the matter is that like I spent years and years, and it's like it's only now I go. I have a beautiful house that I never imagined I'd ever have and that I was worthy of having, but it's beautiful. I have
Mm,
lovely gardens. I write for a living. I don't make a lot of money, but I don't need to make a lot of money. Here in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing to buy.
yeah.
I mean, there's not even a coffee shop. There literally is nothing to buy. So it's like and I ignored all of that. When I was a heroin and crack cocaine addict, and when I was a heroin and crack cocaine addict, I put myself through university, but I never saw
Mm,
that as a good thing. I never looked at that. I just kind of wrote that off. I never stayed with it. I never stayed present and went, you know what? You put yourself through university and got
hmm
a 2-1, not a first, but I think if you hadn't have been rushing off to score drugs or to whatever, make the money to score drugs, you might have got, but and you learnt about philosophy. It's like I never stayed with that. I just went, you're a junkie. It's like we're not taught to celebrate ourselves at all, and
hmm
we're taught to that, and that's for me. It comes back to the whole trans thing. The word trans is a celebration, and I
mm,
feel like my transness is a gift to me and a gift to the world. And
mm,
that's not because I think there's any ego associated with it. I just think it's a brilliant thing to make the best of your life. That's all you're doing. You're just making the best of your life, and no one's getting hurt. No one's whatever. I'm not asking anyone to pick up the pieces. I'm just getting on with my life, and
mm.
yeah. So
Beautiful. I love that. And I think it's just an expression in the end of who we are authentically. And I think we all want to do that. And it looks different for everyone. And it's worth celebrating all of it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that the less we detach transness from trans people, and the more we say actually it's an aspirational state for everybody to make their body and their life fit them better.
Mm,
The less we detach it purely from gender and go, it's about other stuff. It's about capitalism. It's about the world that I want to live in. Do I want to inhabit a world where men lie, where powerful men lie and get away
mm,
with it? Because do I want to? I don't want to live in that world. I want to live in a softer world, a better world, a more upfront world, a fairer world. I saw this thing yesterday where Richard Branson flew a rocket into this and said that he was doing it for us so that we could go into and become space tourists. And I just thought, what bullshit are you? We are destroying this planet, and you are saying that you have spent billions so that you could go up and look at a planet that we're destroying. And you're saying it's for us. How dare you use us to define your ego? This is about you and the unfairness of capitalism. It's like my transness is political. It's a political statement as much as anything else. My transness, saying I'm trans, it stands in for me saying I'm a socialist. I want fairness. To be trans is to want a different world. To be trans and to be upfront about that is to want things to be different. It's not to listen to the bullshit from Richard Branson. You're doing it for yourself. Just, like you've got an island. You had a whole island for yourself. You're doing it for yourself. You're creating rubbish everywhere you go and messing up everywhere you go and creating more pollution, and it's for you. It's got nothing to do with us, quite frankly. So, yeah, transness is in 2021 trans people and gender non-conforming people are the liberators, and they're the only potential liberators. Well, along with other marginalized groups, along with women along with feminists, along with, look at the shit that Marcus Rashford and that they has just got, young black men who are changing the world, who are doing the decent thing, who are taking the knee and getting books in school and food into children's mouths. We are changing, they are changing, we are changing, we are breaking down the old systems. And to me, transness is part of that radicalism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank God I gave up cis men. I would never have had all this.
Yeah. Wow. Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't talked about yet?
No, it was just lovely to chat to you. It was a real joy to chat to you.
It was.
It's one of the nicest interviews I've done for ages. So thank you for being for just being a good interviewer.
Well, thank you very much. I feel like I just feel my way through it, though. It's quite an intuitive thing. I kind of set my intention for it, and then I just kind of let it unfold, which is good for me as a recovering perfectionist, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, you did it very well. I won't use the word perfect because I think that it would be like somebody saying something like that to me.
Well, that's much appreciated. Let me have another quick look at my notes. Yeah, I honestly can't think of anything. I think that was just a beautiful container as it was, to be fair.
Brilliant. Well, it was an absolute joy, and I'm really glad that we somehow made it work, that we had this conversation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, one thing I could ask you about, I suppose, is your upcoming book. You said it was about, is it like an autobiographical thing, I suppose?
Yeah,
what's it called?
It's loosely a memoir, and it's called A Working Class Family Ages Badly.
Right.
And it's called that because I suppose essentially I think that how could a working class family do anything but age badly in a world that is so classist and is so demonizing of people that have to work really hard for a living? My mum cleaned houses until she could clean no more, until she could literally stoop no more to clean. And really sadly, like when she stopped being able to clean other people's houses, she also couldn't clean her own house anymore. So the book's kind of about that, really. And that comes out, so that's called A Working Class Family Ages Badly. That comes out next February the 10th. And it's a kind of journey through my addiction and other bits and pieces. Quite a bit about sex, I suppose, and about that notion of having sex, but not really, it not being intimate, and about violence. I come from quite a violent background. So, yeah, about all of that. And so, yes, that's done, and that's off with my publishers now. And no doubt that will
Yay!
come back full of edits to do. And in the
Yeah.
meantime, I've just started to work on a kind of series of poems, which
Mm.
is under the title of 14 Minutes of Trying to Love You, which is,
Mm.
I think, about is a kind of book about. I became quite obsessed with the moon when I was writing my last book, and I became quite obsessed with not understanding the moon's surface or not knowing anything. And I realized that it was about aging. I didn't
Mm.
really want to go to the moon. I just knew that I was too old to retrain to go to the moon. And so I started to think about edges and places that we
Mm.
can't visit. And
Mm.
and also my mum's not very well at the moment. So I started to think about. We've started to have conversations about funerals, and
Mm.
so I'm writing a set of poems that or a set of short things that are a bit like poems that I think process those kind of thoughts. So
Mm.
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
so
Will
yeah.
would they be published by the same publisher? Is that
I
something you
have
would do
absolutely. I
independently?
literally, I have written poetry my whole life, but I've never taken it. I've never put any store in it. I've never taken it seriously. I've never shared it with anyone. I've never read it to
Wow.
anyone. I've never thought about it in any way, shape, or form. It just happened after this book,
Mm.
and it's still happening. Every morning I wake up and write poetry, which is really nice. So I
Lovely.
haven't even thought. I literally, and I don't. I kind of just think if things are meant to happen, they'll happen. Like
Yeah.
if it's meant to happen, a publisher will happen, a thing will happen, and so
Yeah,
and
obviously you're under no obligation to put it out there,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
are
And
you?
the thing is that
Yeah.
to be honest with you, I really enjoy this point of being starting to become lost in words. I really enjoy
Mm.
the difficulty of writing. I really
Mhm.
enjoy the. So I've actually booked myself onto some poetry writing courses because I've never
Nice.
studied poetry. So I just thought I would be really good. I like the exercise of or the rigor of doing it. It's like so yeah. So I see it as a kind of longer term project. So who knows what will happen with it? Who knows? It might become another book. It might somehow become the basis of another book. It might not. It might.
Mm.
But the book that will come out next February, there'll be lots of work. When a book comes out, you then get lots of work to do on and around that book.
Of course,
The
yeah.
kind of press and book events, etc., and book readings. So,
Mm.
and I think it's a very the book that I've just finished, which is a working class family ages badly, is kind of very cinematic in a way. So, I mean, it will be a book that I'm going to really enjoy reading from, although some of the readings are really difficult. It will be
Mm.
a book that I'm going to enjoy reading and talking about because I think it's
Yeah.
important.
Nice. Well, I hope to see you on book tour in the UK sometime.
Yes, I have. Well, I've got a flight booked to come over next February, which is when the book comes out. So
Nice.
hopefully, I will be over then.
Nice. Cool.
Fantastic.
Lovely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this with me, Juno.
Been a complete joy. Like I said before, it's been a lovely interview. So thank you.
Thank you. Yay. You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/Juno, where you can also read the transcript, and you can find Juno through unitedagents.co.uk. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com, on social media, and on YouTube. Again, if you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open-minded. Okie dokie. Yeah,
That's
as long
it.
as that's okay. Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Juno.
And I took the
Brilliant.
photograph, so it's fine. Everyone thinks it looks like a professional photograph, but it was me with my iPhone, and
Nice.
I took about 1,000 of them. When I have wasted
Oh my
money going
goodness.
to see professional photographers, they've said to me, "Oh, you look great in these pictures," and I've gone, "I won't. I'm terrible at having my picture taken." And then they've come back and they've taken 1,000 and sent me two, and I've gone. I told you I'm like a shit. Because something happens. I don't want you to take a photograph of me. So when you take it, something in me just freezes
The,
up.
the resistance is visible, right?
Resistance is absolutely visible.